I've actually documented farms literally all over the world. The things that I've seen with animals, I wouldn't put my worst enemies through 10% of what I've seen these animals, the conditions. And we're talking free range, we're talking bio, organic, all that nonsense. I've been in these places too. I want to be as far away from that as possible with the things I buy. That's why I'm vegan. I started to feel less and less welcome as a straight, white, cis man, as I was constantly being reminded. They'll say, if you don't fight for black rights, you're a bad person. They call them single issue vegans. It's an insult. I'm focusing on what I'm most passionate about, and that's animal rights. They want everyone to eat bugs. Why? We've got enough plant-based foods. We don't need bugs. These people, whenever they meet up, they're not eating vegan. They could not be further from veganism if they tried. They do not talk about animal rights. They don't talk about everything I spoke about, what animals go through and the ethical reasons to not do this to them. They're pissing on our backs and telling us it's raining.
Welcome to the Staying Free podcast. In this episode, I spoke with David Rams. David is a YouTuber and popular animal rights activist. I first got connected with David when he reached out to me after he saw me on Lauren Southern's YouTube channel, where I was talking about veganism to her audience and trying to advocate for veganism from a libertarian perspective. David did a response video, and after that, he invited me to come on his YouTube channel to talk about my philosophy and the overlaps that I see between libertarianism and veganism. David really is someone who is actually on the ground doing things. He's going out there, he's documenting what's going on in farms and slaughterhouses and putting himself into some pretty uncomfortable places in order to spread his message. We went into a bunch of different areas on this one. So we talk a little bit about vegan philosophy itself, but we also discuss wokeism and in particular how David has found himself at the center of the culture war. We also discuss the WEF and address the question about whether veganism is part of the globalist agenda. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a like and give it a share on social media. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, give it a 5-star rating on whichever podcast app you're using. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast for future episodes. If you want to support the podcast, that can be done in 2 ways. You can do that via Bitcoin tips, and you can also buy me a coffee. Links to those are in the description. Tips are hugely appreciated, and they will go directly towards the cost of running the show. Thanks to everyone who's supported the show so far by either donating or just by being a listener. I really hope these conversations are adding value, and I hope you'll keep an open mind for this one especially as we cover some different territory. All right, on to the episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, thanks for having me here. I didn't realize you were starting. Do you want to start again? My bad. I thought you were going to do some intro.
That was the intro.
Okay,
that's the short intro. So yeah, David Rams. Just for my listeners to introduce them to who you are. I came on your podcast actually initially because you'd seen me on Lauren Southern's show, right? You saw a video of me on there. Which kind of went pretty big, and then you did a bit of a follow up, and then we had a conversation on your podcast. So yeah, it's kind of like we've bounced around a bit, I guess. Like me going on hers, me going on yours, and now you're on mine. So welcome, man.
No, cheers for giving me the opportunity. I know your audience has probably never heard. You've never had a vegan guest on, so I know it's not quite your core thing. So I'm excited to see how people react to it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, like I said on yours, my podcast, my listeners probably know by now that I am vegan, but it's not something that I've kind of discussed too much at depth. It's not a vegan pod. So it'll be interesting to have a bit of a different discussion. And also one of the reasons why I thought that you would be good for it is because, when we were talking on yours, that you mentioned that you'd kind of had your own wars with the woke brigade and things like that. And, I think that a lot of people, they have this view initially when they come across veganism, they don't know too much about it, etc. They put it in this box along with a lot of other kind of woke stuff. They think that all the vegans, they're into kind of all of the BLM stuff and the kind of the trans agenda or this, that, or the other, whatever the kind of woke issue of the day is, whatever the kind of identity politics is, they kind of throw it in with identity politics generally. And obviously, as me and we're not really in that crowd at all. And, we actually kind of have had our own little, I guess, falling outs with that type of community. Run-ins. So run-ins. Yeah, that's the better way of putting it. So do you want to, first of all, before we go into your kind of battle with the woke brigade, you want to just give a bit of an introduction as to yourself? Because, we don't even know each other too well. So there might be something that I have to learn anyway at this point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name's David Rams. I have a YouTube channel that's got about, just over 25,000 subscribers. I've been on YouTube now consistently for a couple of years. On Instagram, just over 30,000. Again, couple of years, I'd say consistently from, Instagram's a bit longer, consistently from like 2018, from 2017. No, right about the same time. And then now I'm trying to build up Twitter as well. And I've not just been doing that, actually. I've also been very active within the kind of animal rights activism world. I've done lots of different speeches, lots of different activism events. I was a videographer for an animal rights organization, which we'll get to later on, doing investigations and basically filming all the horrible stuff that people don't like to see and they try to hide it. I've been filming that to expose it. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. It's pretty much my whole life, I suppose, is focused in on how to try and create a better world for animals. Born and raised vegetarian, and then vegan from the age of 19. 5 years after my mum went vegan, she went vegan before me, which is something you don't hear very often. And that's I guess that's briefly who I am.
Okay, cool. So you're a lifelong vegetarian, but you've been vegan for, did you say it was the past, how many years you've been vegan?
Since the age of 19.
Oh, okay.
Since
the age of 19.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you are kind of, certainly according to my standards, kind of a bit of an OG in this game. So you've never eaten meat your entire life.
Well, first of all, I'm turning 34. So by the way, so 19, 30, it's about, I don't know, what's the quick math on that? How many years has it been?
15.
15. There you go. About 15. Yeah. But never eaten meat. Yeah. So, I ate it once when I was in school because peer pressure, how it is. It was like my peer pressure drugs experience, but it was a hot dog. So basically, so yeah, a regrettable experience, but I immediately, it was kind of like, peer pressure at high school. I immediately regretted it and then never did it. I never did it on purpose ever again. There's been mistakes, obviously, as a kid. And then even as an adult, there was one mistake because the restaurant just put meat on my dish and then I didn't realize until I'd already taken a bite of it. But obviously it sickens me, but it's not like, I'm not some kind of purist. I'm not kind of like now, like, oh my God, I need to realign my chakras now. It's like, oh my God, I just ate that. I don't want to eat that. I don't believe that this is a good thing. I feel bad about, putting that dead animal in my mouth, but I'm over it quite quickly. You know what I mean? It's like, it's shit, but it happened. So yeah, that's the only experiences I've had with meat.
Okay. So I'm interested to know, because, when you're a kid and you're growing up and you're being raised, as a vegetarian, really when you're being raised as anything, normally you have a tendency to kind of rebel against that. I kind of think that if you're, it's like if you're raised and your parents tell you, okay, never smoke, your instinct is, okay, now I want to smoke. It's like a thing you want to rebel against, right? Did you ever have that as a kid? Did you ever did you feel there was a resistance there? My parents raised me in this way, but did you feel that those morals were your own, or did you feel that those morals were kind of being, I guess, absorbed by your parents?
See, that's a great question because I just said that I'm not a purist, and what I meant by that is that I don't treat this as like some kind of religion that I broke the rules of. That's what I mean when I say I'm not a purist. But the reason I'm so bothered about eating meat and the reason that I actually didn't rebel against my mum is because of my mum being so transparent from day one about why we didn't eat meat. So the second I tried to rebel once, I was quite young, all my mates were getting Happy Meals. And I was like, why can't I have a Happy Meal? I want to eat a McDonald's Happy Meal, which is obviously vegan or not vegan. That's a pretty stupid thing to want, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, it's not good for anyone. But my mum was like, right, okay, I knew this day was going to come. So you want to eat meat? Yeah, I want to eat meat. All right, let's watch a video. She whipped out the PETA VHS videotape, popped it in the machine, and was like, watch that. Now I watched it and I saw slaughterhouse footage. I saw a chicken line where they were hanging the chickens up, and then all their beaks were getting cut off. That's what they do to them before they put them in the farms. when they're because they're all confined and close together, so they can't peck each other and hurt each other. They cut their beaks off, and I saw that. I was like, that's pretty horrible. And then the throat slitting and honestly, it was such a long time ago. I can't remember everything, but we finished it. And then she was like, okay, so how about that Happy Meal? And I was like, nah, you're all right. I don't think I want the meat.
Okay, so I want to, like we said before the conversation, I want to somewhat play devil's advocate here, given that my podcast, isn't a vegan podcast. Some people would say, oh, well, that's you're kind of propagandizing your kid, right? You're giving them kind of shock tactics or whatever. That's not something a kid should see. So, presumably you've been asked this before. So how would you respond to that?
Right. I mean, if the production of your food could be considered a shock tactic, you really want to consider whether or not you should be eating that food, right? I mean, it's just production. There's nothing she showed me was illegal. Like, this was all completely legal, standard practice. At the time, I guess European standard. Nowadays, it would be obviously UK is not in the EU, but that's what it was. None of it was illegal. It was just the reality of the situation. And some people would call it propagandizing, but then if that was propagandizing me, then surely somebody being raised a meat eater is also propagandizing them, because you tell someone, hey, meat is good for you, eat meat, animals is okay, they're all fine. Well, that's propagandizing them. So you could equally argue that. But I would argue that my mum was actually taking away the propaganda and saying, hey, that's the reality. Now, what do you want to do? She didn't tell me this is what you're going to do. She said, right, you've seen it now. So what's your call? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't want to. Is that where it comes from? Yeah. Well, I don't want to do that. She showed me the reality. Yeah. That's what she did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say as well, like, there's so much in mainstream culture, which is propaganda anyway, not just general normalization, but even specifically, I mean, there's a place near where I live in Mexico, like near the airport. It's called Pollo Feliz. And it's like happy chicken, basically is what it's called. Yeah. And this place is, it is like a fried chicken kind of place. And even the fact that you call it happy chicken, I mean, you could easily just walk past that every day and think, well, there's nothing to it. Of course, these chickens are happy. But, if you were to actually look, is that a happy chicken? I mean, it's like, we normalize the idea, when you look at packaging and stuff, you look at, you see a little kind of like barnyard animal running around in a field or something. Yeah. And that's not realistically where stuff comes from. I mean, everything is ultimately false advertising. And I think that you could say, okay, well, there is an age at which maybe you go below that. You say, okay, I don't want to show my kid this, just like you don't want to show your kid violence or whatever. You don't want to show your kid anything necessarily, really distressing. But also, if your child is at that age where they're ready to make a decision on their own, it's fair to give them the truth, right? It's fair to give them the truth about where their food has come from.
For sure. If your kid wants to do something that clearly is going to cause someone else to be either put through a lot of pain and abuse and or killed, you should do everything in your power to encourage them to not do that. And if that includes showing them the results of their decision, I mean, show them the results of their decision. I mean, it's got to, kids, I believe in protecting kids, of course. I don't think it's good to put them through anything that's going to damage them for life. But I think they definitely are more mature than we assume they are, and they can handle some things. It's obviously for each parent to determine that, I suppose, with their own kid. But I think my mum made the right decision. I think at the time I must have been maybe, I want to say 9 or 10, which is, it's still very young, I know, but it's old enough to understand quite a lot, and especially to make a connection between animals and meat. I feel like it was the right time to expose me to the reality. I was pushing back really hard, 9, 10-year-olds can be little assholes when they want to kick off about something, right? So I must have been kicking off pretty hard for it to be like, well, okay, let's watch this then, I think she made a good decision. Yeah.
So just zooming out a little bit into the kind of wider philosophy, when someone asks you that question, which is often asked, just like, why are you vegan, right? Like, kind of like, normally we're expected to kind of justify it. What's your answer to that question?
Why am I vegan? I mean, God, I suppose I can give you, for your listeners, the most valuable thing I can give them is to say that a lot of your listeners, I would assume, are the kind of truther, kind of freedom fighter kind of people. And these types of people tend to criticize people like me for being like city slicker. You don't know what you're talking about. Never been on a farm. You don't know the countryside. You don't know how to take care of yourself. That's kind of, so let me just get rid of all of that right away and tell them that the first time I heard all this stuff, I kind of agreed. I was like, well, do you know what? Maybe I don't have the experience myself. I can only share right now what I've seen other people film and what they've seen. So I changed that. I sit here today as someone who's probably been in more farms than most farmers. Do you understand? Most farmers only be on one farm their whole life. I've been on farms literally all over the world, both being invited in to look around and also letting myself in, because farmers tend to leave this stuff open for some reason. So I've actually documented, a wide range of different types of farms and different places, different sizes. And I can tell you that that's why I'm vegan. As simple as that. I mean, the things that I've seen with animals, I wouldn't put my worst enemies through 10% of what I've seen these animals, their conditions. And we're talking free range, we're talking bio, organic, all that nonsense. I've been in these places too. They're riddled with dead, dying, sick, bone broken animals that are so many of them in one place. If it's birds, thousands of them in one big barn, if it's free range, or in cages if it's not free range, pecking each other, cannibalizing each other. Just dead ones that are all over, because there's so many of them. Some of them die from could be heat exhaustion, could be disease, could just be, I don't various different reasons they could be dying. When it comes to the bigger animals like the pigs, it's just as bad, but they're pigs, so there's less of them sometimes. But then I've been in some of these places where there have been 2,000 pigs spread out in a not so big place. And again, you see dead and dying piglets, you see wounds and all the shit, the feces, the urine they have to live in, sleep in. The mother pigs, the sows, they get put in these like cages, farrowing crates they're called, so they can stand up or they can lie down, but they can't turn, they can't move. They hold them there like that because the piglets feed from them, so that they just keep them in these things. And yeah, and with the cows, the beef industry, it's a little bit different for cows. It's not quite as intensive that I've not seen that quite as intensive in Europe and UK, and but in places like the States and Australia, it is as intensive as well. And yeah, also in slaughterhouses too, not just farms, been in slaughterhouses too. So the entire process both for large animals and also for smaller animals. And after seeing all of this firsthand, I know how it works. I've been there. I've smelt the smells of, been covered in shit, covered in piss, covered in blood, filming this stuff. And I could not want to eat anything or use anything from that industry. I could not want to use any of that any less than I do after seeing it all, if you understand what I mean. Like I want to be as far away from that as possible with the things I buy. That's why I'm vegan.
Right. Okay. And, for people who would say, oh, well, like all of that's bad and all of this kind of like battery farms and these kind of things, intensive kind of animal agriculture is evil. Because I find that most people agree with that when even if they don't necessarily apply it in their actions. Most people say, oh, well, I only buy grass-fed beef or whatever, or some kind of locally raised. Why is that also wrong?
Well, I've just actually, the last slaughterhouse I was filming in, we were able to go in and film. They invited us in. This was a bio-organic, they call themselves an eco slaughterhouse, which is the first, I've never heard of an eco slaughterhouse before. That's how they titled themselves, which is why we asked them, can we come and film? This sounds amazing. They were like, of course you can come and film. We're an eco slaughterhouse. We're nothing to be embarrassed about. We're great. So they kill weekly, and they only kill 50 animals a week, 50 cows a week. And these cows come from these farms you just mentioned, these like local, bio, blah, blah, blah. And there's no argument yet. These cows most likely have a better existence than the other cows in these other farms. And they most likely have a relatively decent life before they get to this place where I'm filming, where now, and I've got it on film, by the way, it'll be released at some point. They're terrified. They're all literally just huddled up in a corner, terrified, quite young, as well. These were from the dairy industry, these ones. They were males from the dairy industry. So from like a eco dairy farm, whatever. And they're terrified. They're screaming. They're going in one by one. And then the cow goes in, gets prodded in with sometimes with the electric prods. They had them, but just slapping them or whatever to get them in if they didn't need the electric thing yet. And they go in this big metal thing. Guy leans over with the gun, shoots them straight in the head. And then within about a minute, they're hooked up to a thing upside down, and the guy's chopping the cow's head off. That's a baby, by the way. They're quite big because cows grow quickly, but they're babies, right? So that's eco, that's bio, organic, that's this small farm stuff, right? No matter how you dress it up, with what life they had before, that is an animal that was having a good life, that they didn't know this was coming. They were living nice, and at this point probably living a pretty good life. The next thing, they're getting shot in the head, and then they're having their head chopped off. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference what happens before that point. Like that ending happens for all of them, whether they came from a factory farm or this bio or eco blah blah blah. It doesn't make a difference really in the end, does it? You're still going to get shot in the head, and you're going to have your head chopped off because somebody wants a burger. So it's not a good argument really to say, well, what about this? Plus just one more thing before we move on. Even if somebody believes that's better after what I've just said, which honestly, if you think that's good, I don't know what to tell you, but that isn't even sustainable anyway. I don't mean environmentally. I mean as in the entire world and all the meat consumption can't survive with these eco, organic, blah, blah, blah farms. These big industrial things are necessary to feed everybody if everybody keeps eating meat. So it's not feasible anyway, even if you thought that was better, which again, as I said, if you think that's good, I don't know what to tell you. Really.
Yeah. That's something, obviously taking aside the kind of ethical aspect of it, that is something that I'm keen to kind of learn more about, because I speak quite regularly with people who, they are, they know their local farm, or they claim to, you never really know, because I find that everyone suddenly seems to become, a local, rearer of cows or whatever when you talk to them on the internet. But actually, I've never really met one in real life. So, but anyway, I'm having these conversations with people, and they say, oh, well, I have this local farmer, and it's all grass fed and blah, blah, blah. And when I say, well, everyone can't do that, even if that was, ethically justified, which I think there's another question about that anyway, right. Which perhaps we'll go into, but even if that was possible, even if that's possible for that individual, is that possible for the entire world? My instinct is no, but quite often, I get told, oh, well, it is. It's just that you can just because there's grasslands, etc., that only can be used for grazing, a cow or something like that, or a buffalo, whatever it is, but it can't actually be used for anything else. It couldn't be used for plant agriculture. Is there any truth to that? Because I haven't really kind of dug too much under the surface into that claim, but I don't know if you've encountered that one yourself. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, of course. There's some land that they can't grow on. Yeah, of course. And then they put animals on that land instead. That's true. The idea that there's not enough land to grow enough calories from the ground for the human population is ridiculous. I know some people have claimed it. They've been thoroughly debunked by people using actual proper data and people who can actually do the analyses, and not just, to be honest with you, carnivore clowns. And I mean that as in carnivore diet clowns. I don't mean people who just eat meat. I mean, there are some people out there, grifters out there, who literally just sell supplements and, these different books and stuff like that off the back of hating on vegans. And the stuff they come out with, like this idea of we couldn't produce enough calories if everybody was vegan, is complete nonsense. Because the thing is, when we talk about industrial versus local, organic, blah, 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 yeah, these organic, eco, blah, blah, blah places might be using just grass-fed cows. They might not be, they usually don't, but they may only have, like, for example, cows eating only grass for their entire existence before they kill them. Let's not like euphemize, before they shoot them in the head and slit their throat. They might have them only eating grass. Okay, fine. Most of them don't. Most of them they call it finishing them, and they use grain. And normally the grain they're using is grain that we eat as well. It's grain that can be human edible, right? I know there's some statistic out there that's been going around. It's claiming that 75% of all the grain, or something like 85% of all the grain, is not human edible. That's the number most people quote. They say, yeah, but the grain that's being grown, people can't eat it. If that's true, right, which I'm pretty sure it isn't, to be honest, I'm pretty sure it's been debunked. But even if we accept that as being true, 85% of the grain grown to feed animals, humans can't eat, right? Well, the rest of it, 15%, think about this, right? We're growing enough grain to feed and kill around 80 to 100 billion animals a year. 80 to 100 billion. Now, like, a lot of these animals, pigs and cows especially, are massive. They weigh way more than people, and they eat way more than people. So imagine how much grain are we growing to feed all those animals, and we're only 8 billion. The 15% that is human edible, you're telling me that couldn't feed the world? Even if you want to go by those statistics, 15% of human edible grain from the food that's going to feed up to potentially even more than 100 billion animals is a lot of human edible grain, right? So even with those stupid numbers, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure are wrong, but even if we go by that, it's still a hell of a lot of food that, let's be honest, we could feed everyone. Most likely we could feed everyone twice with it, to be honest with you. I'm not crunching numbers. I didn't come here today with, the actual, the like statistics and numbers and the data and papers, blah, 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 because that's not what we're here for. But I could, and maybe I will for a video soon, but you see what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, we didn't come here to go into all the things. I guess what I'm trying to do here, first of all, is just kind of lay a groundwork of the ideas, and just kind of, I guess, set aside a few of those immediate questions that people have, because in all honesty, I think that sometimes, as vegans, and I've been vegan for like 7 years, you've been vegan for whatever it was, like 15 years. Sometimes you assume that everyone has had every single one of these questions answered, that everyone has heard it. Everyone, I still I had it the other day where someone said, hey, but we couldn't, if everyone ate plants, then we'd have to eat so much more plants, right? So like, how could we possibly do it? And we think that that's really elementary, and we're like, okay, well, that's just a really sometimes it's easy to dismiss as a stupid question, but I think that some people genuinely haven't heard these. They haven't they haven't been in the environment to actually listen to it, and that's kind of one of the things I'm going to find interesting about doing this podcast as well, because I'm here doing a podcast which is kind of theming around veganism to an audience which like, it's not a vegan podcast whatsoever. It'll be interesting to see kind of like how people kind of like respond to it, because possibly, but I think that what's important is that actually, like, if you are vegan, you don't necessarily just for instance, this space, there might be people who never exposed to those arguments because they're not in that circle. So maybe it's the first time they're hearing them. So I think it's good to just go over a few of them, so people don't think, oh, well, this is nonsense, and then we can get into some other things. So the one more thing that I did want to bring up with you is, or it might not be one more thing, there might be more, but let's just kind of go into this one for a second. People would say, well, like, these animals, they're going to die anyway, right? They're going to die in nature. You are going to have, if an animal is in nature, it gets killed, by a predator or whatever. So if we're bolting it in the head, that's a quick death. So, why is that wrong to do?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it overlooks a really important part of all of this, that these are not naturally existing animals. These are not wild cows or wild pigs or wild chickens. They are absolutely nothing like their wild counterparts. These domesticated cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, goats, none of these animals exist in the wild anymore. They've been genetically manipulated for people to breed and use them, milk them, take the eggs from them, and then kill them when they're done with them, or just straight up breed them to be killed and without the eggs and the milk, and there's different breeds for different purposes, basically. So the animals we're talking about here, they would never have any experience with a wolf, right? Or they never starve to death in the wild, because the only reason they're even here is because some farmer decided, I want to make some money, so I'm going to force these animals to breed. I'm going to forcibly breed them. And that might sound a bit weird. Like, that sounds like, what is it? Some vegan nonsense, forced breeding. But it literally is. They take a cow or a pig, put them in some kind of metal contraption so they can't move, and a farmer will come in there, shove one hand up their ass to locate the cervix, lift it, shove another needle into their vagina and insert them with semen. That's how both pigs and cows get pregnant, right? In the dairy industry, they do it for cows so they can keep getting them pregnant, so they keep having more calves so that they keep making milk, because without the calf, they don't produce milk, right? Like humans, same thing. And but the pigs, they need to keep breeding them. The same with the meat cows. They keep breeding them. That's how they get them pregnant. So, yeah, those animals would never see a wolf. They would never see the rolling hills, the countryside, the forests. They never see any of that. They literally are born in massive barns or cages, and then they will stay there the whole life, and then they will end in a slaughterhouse. So you're not saving them from anything by eating them.
Let's change gears for a second, because I want to go into this idea about kind of wokeism. First of all, whether veganism and wokeism have any similarities, and then I want to go into kind of your kind of story with this, and you kind of having this running, because this is something that I think there is truth. To be fair, there is truth that veganism is kind of correlated with kind of woke people. Like there is an overlap there. Like you are generally going to get more people if they're vegan, generally going to be a higher number of people that are woke, right? There is a correlation there, but there's no causation. I don't see any similarity whatsoever with the philosophy. In fact, for me personally, I think that there's an inverse kind of the philosophies are actually inversely related. I think that people who are vegan, and this is something I've talked about on your podcast, which I'll link to it in the notes, which is that I actually think that libertarianism and veganism have a lot in common, like a lot of shared philosophy. So first of all, I guess, tell me why you don't think that, tell me why, or tell the audience and the listeners why veganism is not a part of the woke movement. And then let's go into a little bit about your story with kind of running up against the woke brigade.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, the woke movement, I suppose, I don't know how we're referring to it, but there's okay, let's call it. Firstly, I don't think being woke is necessarily always a bad thing. I think being an ideologue is a bad thing. I actually define woke as basically ideologues. When I say woke, I don't mean somebody who believes people should have equal rights. I mean, I think I agree with that 100%. And I don't mean people who say, it's wrong that, for example, you mentioned BLM earlier. I'm not against people standing up against police brutality. I think that's great. Stand up against police brutality, but I am against the organization because they are scammers, right? Basically, scam people out of money. So that's where I differ. Like I think most listeners are going to agree with me when I say, yeah, equal rights is good, and getting people who are disadvantaged to not be disadvantaged is a good thing, and not treating people like shit because they look different or sound different or have different preferences is a good thing. This isn't woke in my eyes. That's not being woke. What's being woke is when you take some very weird and extreme positions on topics, and like, for example, seeing racism where there isn't any, or seeing sexism where there isn't any, and then you try to go after people for this perceived imaginary sexism you've created in your head. Now that's woke to me. That's what I'm against. And veganism, right, gets lumped in with that because I don't know, people just seem to think that it's like, okay, blue hair doesn't really wash, and then they must be a vegan, right? And they might be right, but they'd also be very wrong sometimes. Like I get just as much crap from anti-vegan woke people and vegan woke people as I do anti-vegans who aren't like that. Like we get it from all angles. So yes, there are a lot of people who are that ilk that we just talked about, the bad kind of woke people that happen to be vegan, but there's also loads of them that aren't. I mean, BLM protests, right? They used real pigs' heads, severed pigs' heads in their protests. Are you telling me that vegans are associated with that? Come on, like,
did they do that? I never knew that.
Yeah. Wow, they were using it to like call the police pigs. That's right? Wild. What about, another thing woke people do, they throw eggs at politicians they don't like, right? Right-wing politicians, they throw eggs at them. well, that's not vegan either. We're against using all the horrors that happen to animals. We're not going to buy eggs and throw them at people. We don't want to fund that. That's not vegan.
Right.
There's loads of examples of it, of people on that woke side of things doing things that are completely against veganism. So yeah,
I'm not. Again, I'm agreeing. I'm not saying that there is a a massive that everyone who's vegan is woke, or that everyone who's woke is vegan. But I'm just saying there is there's quite a few, right? And I think actually that is coming apart a bit. I think that especially now when I think about the main speakers, the people who are kind of like leading in the vegan community, who are the main, I guess, influencers, for lack of a better term. Generally, they're not woke, actually. You got people like, I was just watching your interview with Joey Carbstrong, least woke guy ever, right? James Aspey doesn't seem to be woke to me at all, right? Like these people. So anyway, like I think that there is a contingent, but there's no relation there. But let's go into your story specifically though, that you have with the Save movement, because you've mentioned it to me, but we haven't really gone into it deliberately because I wanted you to share it on the podcast. So let's hear it.
Oof, wow, that's a story. It's so I used to work for an animal rights organization called the Save Movement, or Animal Safe Movement, and I was working as a videographer for them. Most of my work was in Eastern Europe and India was the bulk of what we did. It was basically we were sent to India to try to identify people there who were like good leaders, because nobody from the Save Movement had been in a long time, basically, and they hadn't managed to get on the ground yet, right? They wanted to build the organization, help activists, because the Save Movement has a lot of funding. So they were able to look at, let's expand, let's go and help some people and try and give them resources and join us, and we can work together. You guys go over there and take some videos and help people, show them how to make videos, show them how to, and just, just work with the local people, basically. So,
but what's the objective of the Save organization, for those who don't know?
Oh, sorry. They want to create a better world for animals. They want to create awareness, raise awareness, get people to change their buying habits, eating habits, and be vegan, and then hopefully for them to stand up and raise awareness of what's going on and how you can be healthy, vegan, plant-based, and basically and help change the world. That's what what they're still going for. They've changed a lot, but this is a whole other topic. But back then, this is what the focus was. And it's one part of their organization is still focused on that. But like I said, whole other topic. But anyway, so we went to India, we met loads of local people, awesome activists, some of the most inspiring, amazing people I've ever met, some of the most dedicated activists, just incredible people. To this day, still just by far the most passionate activists and animal lovers, and, great people. And so that's what I was doing, filming a lot, making these videos. But the crack started to show, and it was actually around 2018, and this woke kind of movement, I don't know, it just kind of seemed to be just getting more and more nasty. Started to I suppose it's this concept of intersectionality that started to creep in, as it does with a lot of these movements. And people who have been monitoring this will see that it's happened with other movements too, where this concept of everything's connected kind of came in, and if you don't agree with it, then you're Satan, you're Hitler, basically. And the Safe movement was no exception. They started to accept it more and more. The people in it started to be quite hostile to people that didn't buy into this idea of everything being connected and one. And if you don't support this, then you're bad and you're not really good for animal rights. And it started to get a little bit complicated, a little bit muddy. And I started to feel less and less welcome as a straight, white, cis man, as I was constantly being reminded, right? That I am the top of the privileged ladder and I need to shut up and step down and get out of the way. And, these things started to come up more and more and more. The Save movement was being more and more accepting of these ideas every day. And it just started to feel really unwelcome, really hostile. It was brewing, stuff was bubbling. Came to a head a couple of times. And then I'll get to the big thing soon. But yeah, there was a few things that kind of led up to this. So, but the main ones I remember, so let me just give you a few examples of how this kind of wokeism kind of started getting really bad. So there was, my partner tried to post a conversation in one of the, groups that we had, a company group. it was a conversation between two women talking about feminism and just highlighting some of the issues with modern feminism. And the post was removed and she was told never to post that ever again, for example. So these things started to kind of come up more and more. My two main things that I believe caused the firing, because I got fired obviously from this. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but they did fire me. The first thing that went wrong was I said, I have an idea. I'm going to make a video, interview some people from all over the world, because it was through the lockdown stuff. So I was like, we'll do it by Skype, we'll do it by Zoom, whatever. They said, great. Yeah, that's a great idea. We're happy for that. Let's go for it. Focus on black and brown people. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's racist. I'm not going to racially profile people. I was planning to just put out the word and have people apply and then interview everybody who applies. They said, no. You go out and target black and brown people. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. So then this was with this like HR person who for some reason was whole of the story. She was taking on more than she should have done. Should we get on a video call with the founder? And then she says, tells me that, I understand that you want to put people's value on their work as opposed to their skin color. I understand that you feel that way, but that's just not the reality. That's just not it. Okay. So you need to do what we're saying. You need to go and focus on black and brown people. And I just pushed back hard on it. I said, the only way I'm going to do it is if you send me a list of people you want me to interview, I'll do it because that's my job. But I'm not selecting them out. I'm not doing that. It's racist. Mm-hmm. And we agreed on that basically. So that kind of was one of the major things that led to the next thing. After that, I made a video. And in this video, it was around BLM time. Stuff was going crazy with the BLM with George Floyd. And a lot of people were pressuring vegans to speak up about it. And I was getting pissed off about it because A, it's in America. Why would I speak up about it? It's in America. It's an American issue. I feel bad about what happened, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But what am I going to do about it? Why am I going to speak up about it? Why should Indians speak up about it? Why should Spanish people speak up about it? Why should anyone outside of the USA be pushing this? This is a US police problem. Why should the whole world have to? So I said, look, if you want to talk about it, talk about it. If you're an animal rights activist or a vegan, you don't want to talk about it, that's all right. Don't talk about human rights, but just don't hurt any humans. It's as simple as that. And if you're a human rights activist and you don't want to talk about animal rights, that's fine. Don't hurt any animals and you don't have to talk about it. I'd like it if you did. And I'm sure people would like it if I spoke for their human rights issues. But there are a million issues in the world, right? And we've only got a limited amount of time and energy and money. And so I'm focusing on what I'm most passionate about, and that's animal rights, okay? But I'm not going to hurt any black people. I'm not going to hurt any women. I'm not going to hurt any gay people. So don't worry. I'm on your side. I'm just focusing here. All right. Posted this video. And then immediately the day after emailed me saying, you have an anti-intersectionality approach. You are clearly against our core values. We don't want to work with you anymore. That was
so your video was saying, you did do a video, but your video was saying, look, like, this isn't really my subject. Like, you did some video on the topic though, right? But it was just basically saying, look, it's not my thing.
It was called Animal Rights and Human Rights. Are you confused? Because a lot of vegans and animal rights activists were getting hounded and attacked by people because they wouldn't speak up about George Floyd. And it was insane. It's like, well, George Floyd happened, but like, come on, there are so many issues that are, let's be honest, objectively far worse than what happened to George Floyd. Like the ongoing slave trade in North Africa. This is not just one black man. This is thousands of black men, hundreds of thousands, slave trades. There's more slaves today than there ever were in the transatlantic slave trade. So why should animal rights activists be forced to speak about George Floyd? Why, when they weren't forced to speak about the North African slave trade? Were they not forced to speak about, right now, all the stuff going on in Iran? Why is no one forcing activists to speak about that as well? You know what I mean? So I just pointed out that, listen, stop with the guilt tripping. People can speak about what they're passionate about as long as they don't harm others in other causes. That's all I said. And that, like I said, that was the straw that broke I wouldn't say camel's back. It's not very vegan. Straw that broke the what are they called? The Sherpa's back.
There's so many phrases that are not vegan friendly.
The straw that broke the Sherpa's back. The straw that broke the Sherpa's back, because I used when I did my Everest base camp hike, we didn't use
but now
animals.
that's racist. Now that's racist.
No, it ain't, because I used a human in Nepal.
Racist.
A guy carried my bag.
You can only use a white, straight, cis male. Sherpas are not white. So yeah, you have to use a woke phrase. Come up with them.
So that was it, man. That was the whole. And there was also even just one thing I wanted to add. Actually, there's the founder of this organization. I remember in another call we had. This is to give you an idea of what was going on and the kind of reason this happened. So in a different conversation about a totally different topic, she'd said something to me. She said that in the past, she has tried to go at things from an all sides perspective, i.e., we need to consider everyone's opinion here and we need to look at all sides of this before making a decision. She said this to me once, right? And she said that she got cancelled so badly for it, for actually trying to be objective and trying to be diplomatic, that these days she no longer does that anymore. And she always takes the side of the current thing, basically. She actually basically said that to me once in a call. So, when you're dealing with an organization that runs like that, it's no wonder I eventually got in trouble and ended up getting the sack, right?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it, though? Because, vegans are such a small percentage of the population, right? Like vegans get, hate all the time. People are, you always having to kind of like justify why you live the way you do, etc. Like it's a fringe, for now, it's a fringe kind of philosophy to live by. You would think that vegans would be kind of hardened to not just falling for the current thing, because it's like, you've already put yourself under that, you've already kind of put yourself in the firing line to some degree. And you're like, no, I'm standing by my principles. This is how I'm living by.
Right.
It's kind of weird that those same people are saying, no, we're now going to fall in line with all of the current thing. And, we can't be seen to be not supporting this, that, and the other thing. And then just throwing principles out. Cause it's like, are we doing things on principle here or are we not? I think that's a big theme of really what I try and live my life by, is like just being kind of morally consistent, across different topics. And, part of that is not just getting sucked in and, because what you were talking about there with like having to racially profile and stuff, that's racism. You might call it positive racism. You might have, you might have good objectives with it by saying, okay, we want more representation. But ultimately, in the process of getting more representation, you have been racist by which you have looked at those people and you've said the color of their skin is going to determine how I judge them or treat them.
100%.
Whether or not you're doing it with from a good place in your heart or whatever, it doesn't matter. If to get there, it's almost like the means justify the ends for these people. It's like the ends is, less whatever it is, racism, more representation, whatever. But then the means involves being racist. And as far as I'm concerned, as soon as the means involve that, like you've already lost.
100%. Yeah. And there's this racism, at that point it was rife. It was really, really like full force racism. And I still don't understand how people didn't see it as racism. And I also didn't understand, like, if you were a black or a brown person, and I imagine if I contact you, hello, I'd like to interview you for the Save movement. We've selected you because you're black. Okay, if I can't say that, if that's right, then why am I doing it? If I can't tell them the truth, why are we doing it? Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to face up to the fact that this is racism. They were trying to hide it, right? If I said, oh, can I say this to people? And they would say no, they would have said, no, don't tell them that's why we're selecting them. Right, so it's racist. Do you know, it's a pretty simple litmus test, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd never thought of that before. It's like, unless you can, straight face justify what you're doing, and actually you don't have to kind of, slip away and whisper it, right? If that's what you're having to do, the chances are you're doing a bad thing, right? Like it's very easy. Yep. I just think that a lot of the time, it comes back to this thing. It's like, you've got to know your own shadow, right? Everyone's got to know their own shadow. And you've always got to be questioning, are the things that I'm doing the right things? And, because sometimes you might think, oh, well, I am doing the right thing. It's like, this comes back to, various arguments. I know that on yours, we talked about the whole kind of like socialism idea and socialism versus capitalism and all of that. So I won't go too deep into that subject because we discussed it at length there. But, that idea that it's like, oh, well, if I steal from someone who's got more money and give it to someone who's poor, you might think, okay, well, I'm doing a good thing there. But you've breached that initial first principle by saying, okay, well, I'm going to take from someone who's rich and give it to someone who's poor. It's like, is that a good thing? Well, no, because stealing's bad. So if in order to get the world that you want to see involves stealing or involves breaking any other kind of first principle, you need to question whether that's actually whether you're shooting for the right target, you know?
Yeah, totally. And there's that kind of the racism there within the safe movement itself was one thing. There was even racism from the vegan community around this as well while we were in India, which again, I'm telling you these stories not to like cry about it, but to show the listeners that even as vegans, we have to put up with the same crap you're most likely having to put up with in your workplace, or with, if you have any woke friends or woke family members or whatever, like we get the same crap. Like this, there's so many people like me and like you, Johnny, who are just, not into it in this way. And the second we pop our heads up and voice like, hey, I don't know, that we get absolutely destroyed, like, or not destroyed, but they try to destroy us. They try to ruin us, And one of the ways they try to ruin is a good story. We were in India, working with this local lady who was helping us with all the stuff. And she had this job where she was dealing with kids, and they did a play that she taught. It's like a kids group thing, and she ran this kids group, and they were doing a play, and we were going to go see this play, this outdoor kind of street play where they were talking about animals and stuff. It was very nice, very cute little thing. And she said, do you guys want to be in the play? It's like a street performance. Do you want to be in it? So we were like, I mean, yeah, why not? I guess it's an experience. Why not? We don't understand anyone's language. We don't get what we're going to be doing. Can we do it in English? Yeah, you can do it in English. We'll just tell you to say these two things. All right, then cool. We go down there. Someone films the whole thing. We do one line each, right? It was something like, I don't know, it's something like eating animals is wrong, or just kids stuff. It's for kids, right? So it's not. So anyway, we did this, and it goes online. The vegans, quite a lot of them, lost their minds, saying like, oh, this is white supremacy, colonization, blah, 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 simply because we were white and they were brown. That's the only real reason they had to be upset with this, that we shouldn't have been there saying whatever we said. This is vegans, by the way, telling us we shouldn't say things like, killing animals is wrong because we're white, and that's somehow wrong to say that to brown people. It's just incredible, man. So this is the level of nonsense that was going around at the time, and the level of nonsense we had to put up with. And even still today, there's still quite a lot of this going on within, the vegan world. So it's really not, if you're thinking that we're all the same, you're so wrong. You're so completely, utterly wrong. I'll let you speak, and just to let you know, there is something going on right now with me, that I'm releasing in a video tomorrow explaining it. So if you want to get into something current, and we can get into that as well, with me battling with some more of these woke idiots, it's happening right now.
Oh, you're into a new battle. Amazing. You're just hopping from one to the next. But you're right. You mentioned
some
before
years in between.
Is it? Okay, fair enough. You had a bit of respite.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you mentioned before about like intersectionalism, and that is the key. That is the key word, really. Actually, we're talking about wokeism and stuff, but when it comes to the vegan stuff and how it's affected you in particular, like it's intersectionalism, and intersectionalism is so wrong because, like you were saying, that's a great example of it, right? Like, as vegans, we're trying to put the message out there. You don't need to kill animals. Like, it's unnecessary. Like, don't do that, right? It doesn't matter whether you're saying that to a white person or whether you're saying that to a brown person or a black person, right?
No.
If the message is true, if the essence of the message is true, you shouldn't care who you say it to. You can say it to everyone. It doesn't mean that you're saying, oh, you're, barbarians, you're savages, you're whatever. That's not because white people are doing it too, right? White people are eating pigs and cows, and so are people in any country in the world. So, yeah, essentially, like this is, this is where the problem lies: is that intersectionalism fundamentally doesn't work, because what you inevitably have. And this isn't just true of veganism, right? Like I see this happening also, for instance, with the feminist movement. You've now got the feminist movement, which is at war with itself, and it's kind of fractioned into two camps now. But you've got the feminists who say that you shouldn't allow trans women into, female sports and females, private spaces. And you've got the feminists that say, oh no, that's perfectly okay. Trans women are women. And now they're at war with each other, right? Because it's like, which takes precedence? Do you care about women enough to give them private spaces away from men? Or do you care about women only to a certain extent, but then you care about the trans issue enough that suddenly now that supersedes it, right? It's like, ultimately it all breaks down. So this is why you have to have fundamental first principles. And I kind of think that what's happening with feminism, with it fracturing off, there is every possibility for that to happen with the vegan movement as well.
Oh yeah,
there's no reason why it couldn't happen. It could happen in the exact same way because of things like what we're talking about. Because people suddenly say the vegan message is important, but we can't give the vegan message to people in India or to people in Africa because they're black and brown. So therefore, we have to reserve it for them. And then you're going to get this fraction when you're going to get some people who say, well, veganism is only applicable to white whatever people in Western countries, and the people who think that it's not. And it's either true or it's not, right? And in my view, it's the message is true, and therefore we should apply it universally. I would hate to see this fracturing happening, like I see it happening in the feminist movement, the vegan movement, and it's so unnecessary from my point of view.
Yeah, completely. The intersectionality is good in the legal space where it is supposed to be. That's where it was created for. It's created for
was it like
the legal system.
Yeah, what was it created for?
So basically, U.S. legal system would acknowledge that, for example, a black man could be a victim of racism, right? They would acknowledge that there is discrimination and there is like bias because this black man is black, right? And then a black woman would also have that same consideration from a judge or from a whatever, right? They would say, yeah, okay, we consider that you could have been the victim of racism because of your skin color. But what they wouldn't consider legally was the idea that she was also a woman. They would be considered separately. Well, what this her name's Kimberly Crenshaw. What she did was successfully put together a system that encouraged the legal system to consider that a black woman has a different experience than a black person or a woman, right? Because you are seen as not only a woman, not only a black person, you are a black woman. So it's like it almost kind of or intersects basically these two issues that back in this time at least it wasn't that long ago, but like still things were very different to what they are now. The legal system needed to acknowledge that okay, this person is experiencing not only potentially discrimination for being a woman, discrimination for being black, but also discrimination because she's a black woman. It's not the same as a white woman and it's not the same as a black man. It's a combination. You need to consider that, right? That was what it was created for.
Do you? I don't understand. Like, surely, like, depending on what's actually happened is whether you consider it. Like, if someone was attacked in a female changing room and raped, then being a woman is relevant, but being black is not relevant. But if someone racially attacked them and was shouting racial slurs, then being a woman is not relevant. So, like, how can they both be relevant?
But it is though. Being black is relevant because there is the chance that she's been targeted not only because she's a woman and the person wanted to rape somebody, but because she's black and the person was also racist. Because that I don't know about these days. But in the times,
so what you're saying is that there's a possibility for that person to have been attacked on two fronts from two.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like being attacked because you're seen as lower because you're a woman and you're black. It's like a double reason for somebody to be targeted as opposed to if she was a white woman or a black man, basically.
But then how would that affect things like on a legal basis? Because surely the nature of the attack is distinct from so like if someone's been attacked, like it's group GBH or whatever, or if someone's been raped, it's rape. Like how do those things even weigh in?
I don't know. I guess they would. I don't actually know like how it played out legally, as in like what actual difference it made. I just know about the theory and the concept and how it was applied. Like in a court of law, it would have to be considered that this person is not only black and not only a woman. This is a black woman. It's a whole other thing you need to consider. There's the possibility of her being targeted for being a black woman specifically, not just for being black or for being a woman, if that makes sense. That was the concept. I mean, to me, it makes sense to consider. I mean, it basically what it's saying is consider that there are certain people with certain identities that have confounding factors that could make them a target more so than somebody with only one of those factors. That makes sense to me.
Right.
I don't see it's logical, right? But what happened after that was lots of different activists from different places started to apply it to the kind of the worlds of like activism or whatever. Like vegans started to apply it. They'll say if you don't fight for black rights, then you're a bad person. If you focus on animal rights, they call them single issue vegans. It's an insult. It's like you're just an idiot. You're a stupid white single issue vegan, right? Yeah, it's an insult. It's like, because you won't also fight for black people or fight for women or fight for. But then the irony is, and this is going on a tangent, but the irony is these people who always push this stuff, when they say fight for, it means like what, they're posting a black square, or they're they're supporting women fighting against the pink tax on tampons. It's like, listen, mate, if you're not even fighting for like women in Saudi Arabia or the slave trade in North Africa, then how can you possibly hold me at this standard? All you're doing is posting a black square and fighting for something, like fighting for, I saw one thing feminists were fighting for, some people I knew, fighting for, because there's a pay gap in Hollywood. I mean, are you fucking for real right now? You really want to fight for the pay gap in Hollywood? Oh my God, they're missing out on a couple million on top of the 10 million for that movie. That's, oh my God. Did you hear Brad Pitt got 20 million and then his co-star only got 10? Can you believe that, man? Oh my God. That's the hot topic. That's the thing we need to focus on.
Well, that's a perfect example of something which you can never expect for pay equality, because like you're literally doing a different role. If there is ever something where you can say for 100% certainty two people have different roles, it's if it's a different actor playing literally a different person, right?
Don't even get me started on the football stuff as well. They were fighting for equal pay for men's and women's football, when women's football generates a fraction of the revenue of men's football, but they're demanding equal pay. It's just
exactly. This is actually, it gets kind of hilarious because they'll say, oh well, women are getting paid less in sport and they should be paid the same, and you say, okay, well, they're not making as much. You say, oh well, yeah, it's because they're not putting it on the TV at the prime time. And it's like, okay, let's go back there. Why aren't they put it at prime time on TV? Because people don't want to watch it. And they say, oh well, people don't want to watch it because they hate women. It's like, okay, well, who's watching it? Like the men are watching the men. Who are the women watching? They're not watching the men or the women. Like, or if anything, the women want to watch the men as well. Right?
Man,
like most girls I know who are into sport, they also want to watch, Federer and Nadal and Djokovic, or they want to watch, Manchester United or whatever. They're not watching the women's sports or the women's sports people. Like generally speaking, even the women want to watch the most elite athletes. The most elite athletes in the world, I'm sorry, but are men, right? That's the way that nature has kind of panned out.
In most sports, of course.
Yeah,
of course, man. Of course,
there probably are some which women excel in. I can't think of any. Can you?
There are. Like, I think when you level any sport that kind of levels the playing field a little bit, women can compete with men in. Like, I'm pretty sure. I want to say it off the top of my head, but I don't know. Like they do. Isn't like Olympic volleyball like mixed and never? It's not one gender, and I think a lot of women dominate that actually.
That's good.
I don't know for sure though.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you, man, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't tell you for sure.
You would think that something, like, I don't know, snooker or darts, you'd be like, women are gonna. There's absolutely zero disadvantage, but you don't see women being. But there is elite at those
there is
sports,
a disadvantage, man. Like the wingspan. Think about wingspan of men versus women. Men tend to have much larger wingspan, and that's way bigger advantage for both darts and snooker.
Oh, I see. Because you can basically reach your arm out further.
Yeah.
But is that a thing? Yeah. I don't recall. Like normally the people who I see winning darts tournaments, they're like massively fat and have tiny arms than people with.
It's true.
I don't see those people with massive monkey arms.
Right. Yeah. For snooker, I think it's a problem. For darts, you're onto something though. I don't know why women don't get into. Well, I mean, darts is historically just a fat, drunk men's game. I don't think it's a particularly sexy game for anyone. I don't know any young people that watch darts. It's just,
mate, like, you're from England. There's enough fat, drunk females out there.
That's a good point. I don't know. Maybe they are competing with the men. I don't see why not though. Why is darts not mixed if it isn't mixed? That makes no sense. There should be a mixed sport, shouldn't it? Mixed gender sport.
Yeah. But then that's the thing though. Then do you mix every single? I kind of feel like if you mix sports, you've then got to determine whether there is any kind of advantage, right? So like, in tennis or football or something, you'd say, well, let's not mix it. But I guess every sport maybe should have some kind of committee that says, look, are we going to mix this or not? And it should be based upon, is there any kind of genetic advantage if you're a man?
Absolutely. It should be based on pure science. Like for example, chess, obviously. can be mixed. How do we even get to this, man? Intersectionality, I think. So back to to bring it round. Intersectionality is the theory of it. I believe it makes sense, to be honest. It seems like common sense to me. I can't believe that wasn't being considered in legal systems when somebody came up and had something happen. It's just ridiculous that it wasn't considered. But the application of it with the animal rights world and vegan world is just it always ends up in just ridiculous conclusions and just people attacking me most of the time and other vegans who refuse to bend the knee. Literally in 2020 refused to bend the knee, as pretty much everybody was bending the knee and putting their fist in the air. And it doesn't mean you don't care. It just means you're not bending over for an organization that's clearly capitalizing on a horrible thing. It smelt fishy. So, you don't bend the knee and then you get attacked. That's what's happening to me right now. Actually, I've refused to bend the knee on something else. And now I'm going to take the hit for it. So,
can we have a teaser? Or are you keeping it?
You're not. When are you going to release this? Actually,
not for 2 days.
Oh yeah, it's fine then.
3 days probably.
Yeah, it's fine then. So basically, I did an interview with Buck Angel, who is, maybe listeners know who he is. He's a trans man. He's been trans for 30 years, trans before it was cool. He transitioned fully like 30 years ago. So like, dude's got full beard. Like he's a full on dude, right? In every way, right? So it's pretty interesting to see, because I'd never actually seen anyone before I met him. I'd never actually seen anyone that I was like, you're trans? Like, really? That's crazy. Like, and on the men's side, women's side, yeah. Like, I've seen lots of trans women that I was like, oh yeah, that's surprising. Like, but men's side.
So this is a woman who's become a man.
Yes, and a very, very, like, he's a dude. Oh,
right,
like,
Buck
to me,
Angel, of course. That's someone's name. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, I wouldn't have ever questioned him, is what I'm trying to say. If I saw him in the street or saw him, whatever, just met him, I'd be like, oh, I've never in a million years guessed this guy was once, presenting as a woman. Let's put it that way, because that's how he puts it. Like, he presents as a man, but he's biologically female. That's how he defines himself. And I'm totally on board with that. I think that's great. Like, I actually, I was on board with a lot of what he was saying, especially the bit about presenting as a man. All he said in this interview is, I want to present as a man, and all I want for you to do, I want you to see me like as a man. I know I'm not a man, I'm biological female, but I would like for you to see me as a man, and if I could get you to like, refer to me as a man and stuff like that, that's my dream. Like, I want to be accepted. I feel like I am a man, and I'm trying to make that reality. That's my world. And I was like, that's such a refreshing take on it, because it's kind of what I feel makes the most sense, right? And we had this big discussion, and it was quite nice, actually. He was a really cool guy. He had some problems with trans kids. He feels like the movement is targeting kids, and he doesn't like that. And he had some issues with some stuff there. Basically, this interview goes live. It's been months, by the way. It's been a long time since this interview went live. And then somebody got really upset with it, so I invited her on. She debated him. Wasn't a very good debate, I'll be honest with you. It was kind of like a mismatch of what they both wanted to talk about, but it's interesting. It's spicy. Go on my podcast channel if you want to watch it. It's worth watching. It gets very heated, and because I have not walked back what I said with him, and what I didn't actually say anything. I agreed with him on some stuff, because I refused to walk back on that, because I refused to take the video down, because I refused to denounce Buck Angel. These people have been commenting all on my tweets, calling me transphobe, trying to force me to like answer their questions about whatever, and make with loaded questions. You know how they do this kind of stuff. Like, do you support this? And if if it's a lose-lose, you say yes, you lose, say no, you lose, right? It's like those kinds of questions. And now I'm informed that they're making a video to try to take me down, to try to cancel me, because of this one interview with a trans man, and because his opinions were not the right opinions. So remember, listen to trans people, but only if they're saying the right things, guys. That's the rule. Yeah. If they're not saying the right things, don't listen to them. So that's where I'm at right now. And I've made a video. The video's uploaded. It's going to be posted tomorrow, where I'm exposing the kind of comments these people have made towards me, and exposing that they're making a video. And we'll see how my audience takes it. maybe they'll all turn against me. Maybe most of them are woke. Who knows?
Well,
maybe this is
who
the
are
end.
these people?
They're vegans,
This is your
dude.
final interview.
These are vegans. Sorry, I didn't mention that. These are vegans. Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So you know them. You know, like which channel it's gonna come out
on. Yeah. I've
Okay,
redacted
right.
it. I don't want to because I don't want to promote them. But
No,
yeah,
of
I
course,
know.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I know the people. I know the people involved in it, and I tried to reach out actually before the public stuff came, before they were attacking me publicly. I actually I heard about this happening through a friend, tried to reach out to the main culprit, the main person, said, hey, why don't you just come on my podcast? We'll just talk it out. And they ignored me, completely ignored me. And I had to go back to the friend and say, hey, can you find out? And he said, yeah. They said no, basically. They said they want to make the video first. So it's like, right,
Yeah, of course.
that's what you want to do.
About right. But you're no stranger to kind of getting hate in your videos, right? Like I've been going back and listening to some of your earlier ones. I watched your the Sadhguru one, and you did one with Eckhart Tolle, and there's another guy. I think there was maybe it was Sam Harris. You've done a few videos where you've basically been pointing to these, people like, are kind of like respected, and they're very like high up as like thought leaders, and you kind of took them apart, and then people came after you for that, right? So
yeah.
I
can handle the hate.
Strong skin, some thick skin.
It is, yeah. I mean, I can handle the hate from people that are clearly going to get upset when I call out their spiritual daddy or whatever. Oh, spirit me harder, daddy. But like with these people, guru me harder, please. They can't. These people can't go through life without a spiritual guru. It's kind of pathetic. And I don't mean that as in like, I don't hate these people, but the reactions they've given to me, I mean, God, you should see some of the vitriol coming from these people's mouths because I called out the spiritual daddies. It tells you that like, it is pretty pathetic that you can't handle like a shred of criticism against the person you've idolized. But anyway, yeah, I can handle that because it's expected. When I make that kind of video, I know it's coming. I'm actually kind of making it for that reason because it's a good way for me to get across the message I want to get across, and kind of using this popular figure who said some silly stuff about animals, about veganism. I use them to propel the message forward. I'm not trying to take these people down. I'm trying to call out the nonsense in what they're saying, but their fans and followers take that as me trying to take them down. They can carry on doing the work they want to do. And if you want to follow a fraud, that's your call, but I'm just calling out the hypocrisy, right? And I can handle the backlash from that. But it's a worse backlash when it comes from your own camp,
For sure, yeah. But I think that this is something that everyone ultimately has to go through on this journey. If you want to, be someone like talking about these topics, and when you're in the game of like doing, YouTubing and podcasting and all of that kind of stuff, you have to be willing to kind of, first of all, like get a bit of hate, but also to have opinions which kind of converge with people that you thought would have the right opinions. I mean, I felt like over the past couple of years in particular, I've had this with vegans as well. I was mentioning to you about Gary Francione, who was the person who kind of who inspired me most to go vegan. I just thought that his videos and his interviews and his kind of podcasts and stuff, they were absolutely great. And I even to this day, I still kind of reluctantly recommend that people go and listen to some of his stuff. I don't know the kind of work he's putting out now. But he's gone full intersectionalist, and he's against the thing that I kind of really got into with him on was the that he says that like it's selfish to have babies, no one should be having children. If you do, you're selfish and stuff. And it's this environmental intersectionalism with vegan. I'm not an environmental vegan. I accept I don't live a very environmental life. I do my best with like waste, but I take a lot of flights. I live abroad. I know that I'm not that environmental. I don't do it for environmentalism. I do it purely for ethics and to kind of minimize suffering towards animals. Whereas, someone like Gary Francione, he seems to have kind of really gone all in on the environmental veganism to the point where now he's intersectionalizing that with all of this other stuff. Like no one should ever have babies. No one should ever take flights and stuff. And I'm like, if that's what you want to do, fine. But don't pretend that that's part of veganism. That's an integral part. It's not, And the other thing, is that I found it, especially over the past 2 years, is I've had that with so many of my heroes. So many people that I followed, and I was like, okay, this person is worth listening to. Sam Harris is a good example. I thought that when all of this stuff kicked off with COVID and everything, and when it was just proving to be so heavily like exaggerated, and when the real data was coming out, and when the vaccines were being like pushed on everyone as a kind of compulsory thing, and everyone had to take them or you lose your job. I was like, okay, people like Sam Harris are going to talk about this. People like Douglas Murray, people, I had a kind of like a loose list in my head. And then those people just went silent. And I was like, man, you can't have heroes in life. You can have people who you respect for a time, but they're probably always going to be fleeting, and they're always going to disagree with you on some things. And sometimes that's going to be really integral.
Sam Harris wasn't just quiet about it. He was, in his podcast with Ricky Gervais, they were like mocking people who weren't getting it and trying to figure out like, oh, why are people being so stupid right now? And they were comparing which ones they'd had and like when they got them, and they were like super like, it wasn't just that he was like silent. He was the complete opposite of silent on he was the opposite of what you'd expect with it. He was just kind of like completely towing the line. Yeah. Which was, I was surprised to hear that too.
I didn't know that.
I thought between these two, of all people, like we'd hear something a bit like, oh, maybe they're going to like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not sure about this. Maybe like the systems, maybe something's like a bit off here. They were both like, nah, everything's fine. Like, everything's like just to totally follow in all guidelines, like no question at all, which I was just, it is what it is. But I guess it's where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? This whole thing, like everyone's a rebel until it really gets, the shit hits the fan big time. Then it's like, okay, who's really a rebel? Who's really looking into this now?
Totally, man. It's like everyone is like that. Everyone is a contrarian until it actually counts. And I just think that there's so few people who actually will take a stand on something and just say, this is my belief, and I'm going to kind of stick to it. And people just seem to capitulate. It's disappointing to hear that about Ricky Gervais as well. I know that he did like promote the vax at some point, but he went vegan as well. And he went vegan only after a lot of, when he was just clearly being morally consistent about all of this stuff about being against hunting and this, that, and the other. And it took like 2 years. And by the end of it, it's like, okay, he became vegan, like, credit to him for that. But then, it comes to this issue, and all of a sudden it's back to, just zero principled thinking. And I just think there's so few people in the world. Like, we like to think that, maybe most people are kind of principled thinkers or whatever, but I actually think that just so many people, they're not really thinking about, and especially in these thought leader circles, they're not actually thinking about their fundamental principles at all. Like, they're just, they just do whatever the current thing is.
Yeah. And that was a tough time, to be fair. It really did test a lot of us, throughout these times, and people made the decisions they think is best for them. I mean, it wasn't like, to be fair to both of these people, Sam Harris and Ricky Gervais, it wasn't like they were like, I didn't see this promotion you were talking about. And they were relatively quiet, in my opinion. There's just, apart from this one segment of one podcast that was out of like 12 podcasts. So it's like, I don't know if it's enough of a reason to really roast them that much. But I was surprised to hear it, to be fair. I was just, because we were also,
It's not just that though. I don't know if you saw the Sam Harris went on the Trigonometry podcast, and he was talking about like Trump, and
that's the whole thing, man. I've not seen the whole thing, but I know now. You know he's left Twitter, right? Sam Harris deleted his Twitter.
Yeah.
And I heard why. I listened to his podcast today. He made some convoluted Sam Harris style excuse, but basically, let me just cut to the chase. For anyone that doesn't know why Sam Harris quit Twitter, I listened to like the main bit of why he quit, and what he's basically saying is trying to hide it. He just doesn't like what Elon's doing. He doesn't like that Trump was reinstated, and he doesn't like all the backlash he's getting, so he deleted Twitter. Now, his real excuse that he gave is like, oh, it was just so much hate, and I was finding myself, hate was growing inside me, so I realized that this just wasn't for me. It's like, bullshit, bro. You were just upset because he brought Trump on, and you said something stupid about Hunter Biden, and you were getting slammed for it. Like, you should have been slammed for it. Like, you deserve it, mate. Like, just eat it up. The news cycle moves on. Yeah, it'll be gone in 2-3 days max. Just go off Twitter for a couple of days. What are you doing? Come on, man. Don't be. It's very immature.
Well, better still, just admit your mistake. I mean, I kind of think that with Sam Harris, he's a guy who, he prides himself on this whole like, oh yeah, I'm sitting around meditating all day. I have so much. I'm so fucking enlightened, and I understand myself, and I've dissolved my ego and shit. And it's just like, this guy's got the biggest ego of anyone, because the idea that he just thinks that he can say whatever, he can just just literally say whatever comes into his mind, and that he will never walk back from it. He'll never say, look, I made a mistake. Like, that's not a guy who's dissolved their ego. This is a guy who lives, he's the embodiment of ego, in my view. Yeah.
Well, what he said, by the way, I just realized, like, I think it's true, man. And I want to just quickly go over what he said in case anyone's wondering. You can go watch the clip yourself, but I'll just quickly explain it. It's brilliant. It's like brilliantly terrible. They were talking about like the Hunter Biden laptop thing and how it came about around like, it was like, it could have influenced the election, right? And basically his logic was he doesn't care if it was real or not, because it could have influenced the election so that Trump got reelected. So he didn't care. At this point, he said, Hunter Biden could have had children locked in his basement. I didn't want to hear about it because we needed Trump out of office and that was more important. That's what he said during a podcast. And what's crazy is the guy who was, what's his name? The guy who interviewed him from Trigonometry, Constantine, right?
Constantine Kissin?
Yeah, Constantine. So he tweeted about it and said, like, I'm disappointed to see Sam Harris deleted Twitter after all this, blah, blah, blah. And someone responded and said, would you have removed this section if Sam Harris requested you to remove this section from the podcast? And he said, of course. So it's like, it's, you know, you could have avoided all this if you just had some insight and walked out of the room and said, you know what, that bit about the kids in the basement, that was too far, right? Hey, Constantine, could you cut that out, please, mate? I feel like I went too far. Yeah, no problem, Sam. No worries. You know,
exactly. And sometimes you say stupid stuff when you are, you know, I know from doing these, this is going to be my 42nd or something episode, something like that, okay, right? Like, nice. I know that there's been stuff that I've said in these that in retrospect I've gone, okay, I was trying to make a point there and I didn't really like express that correctly, and I just clip a little bit out. You know, it's not like, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think there's, if you genuinely repent for something that you've said, or you think, you know, that came across wrong, and you're like, look, I didn't actually mean that, so I'm not going to spend all of this time trying to kind of like having to justify it, and that's fine. But this is the thing, that is another expression of his ego. The fact that he could have just easily afterwards said, you know what, I was trying to make a point about this thing, but I used a really hyperbolic example that actually sounds really bad, and I didn't really mean it in that way. Can you take it out? Everyone would have forgiven him for that. Like, even if he had told people afterwards, look, I said this thing that I don't really agree with, but I said it kind of just, you know, in the moment and stuff. You know, when you do a lot of podcasts, sometimes you say stupid stuff.
Excited.
It'd be fine. But yeah, you know, it's just, it's dumb. It's dumb. But I think that he needs to do some actual introspection. And he's always telling everyone else like, oh, everyone else needs to introspect. And even, you know, when I've heard him talk about Twitter before, and he said like, oh, you know, Twitter has this effect on people. And it's like, no, mate, like I use Twitter every day. I'm perfectly fine. Like, you know, this is a you thing.
That's so funny. It's the same with Jordan Peterson, man. It's exactly the same with Jordan Peterson. He quotes all this stuff, self-help, 7 rules, 12 rules, blah, 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 make your bed. Dude's an absolute mess on Twitter. He's a disgrace. He turns into a complete fucking moron. I swear, if you change Jordan Peterson's name just for some like Anon account, you wouldn't notice a difference. Like these Anon idiots who shitpost, that's Jordan Peterson. You know, what is he doing these days, man? He just called someone a rat. He just retweeted someone and said like, you disgusting rat, he called someone. And I saw like, you know, and the stuff that got him removed as well from Twitter. And also that time he was playing Smash or Pass with Twitter, just put up a photo of a plus size model and was like, not beautiful, not beautiful at all. Yeah. It's like, mate, what are you doing, man? There's this great clip from a Ryan Long podcast where you'll have to go, I'll send it later. It's on Instagram if you guys want to go check it. And that's where I got the Smash or Pass thing from. They do this like skit where they're like playing, you know, the Daily Wire just hired Jordan Peterson and all he wants to do is play Smash or Pass. And they're like, oh, we thought you were going to do something with the culture war. And he's like, no, I just want to play Smash or Pass on Twitter. I just want to talk about fat models not being attractive. It's like, what is he doing, dude? You're like a 50-odd-year-old psychologist. Why are you talking about fat models on Twitter? Like, why would you even step into that arena, you know? I mean, and if you're going to say not attractive, instead of saying not attractive, if you're going to make a comment on like, oh, this is unhealthy and not a good image, then say that. Say like, I don't think we should be promoting this unhealthy body type like a professional, like a scientist would, like you're supposed to be. Like, why is he? Oh, mate, I could go on about this. I just feel like he's turned into this complete moron. I don't understand, you know, it's not the same dude that was around a couple of years ago, is it?
Really?
completely lost
to be
it.
honest, I haven't followed him much. I haven't followed him
mate.
much. So I think I think he might have been on Piers Morgan recently. Did an interview with him. I have a feeling that he did one with Jordan Peterson recently, and it was you know, he came across all right, but
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still think he's done like overall like a lot of good, you know, especially for like young men.
Of course,
young men and stuff. He filled a space. Yeah. But it's just, I guess
totally.
maybe recently he's fallen off it a bit. You know?
Definitely. Do you know he's like a massive anti-vegan as well? Did you know that? Like super anti-vegan.
I didn't know that he was an anti-vegan. I know that he he advocates like the carnivore diet and stuff, right?
Mate,
I think he's full carnivore apparently.
He is. There's this video you should check out that Lifting Vegan Logic just made, and Jordan Peterson did a video recently where he's attacking vegetarians. He's saying the diet's unhealthy, and he uses this study to prove it. He's like, look at this study. In this study, they had the people with more saturated fat had better health outcomes, including a lower risk of stroke, right? And he's saying, see, vegan vegetarian diets associated with better health? No, not here. Not here. Saturated fat was associated with better health, right? And on the surface, you're like, oh my God, you check the study. It does show that. It actually shows that, right? Out of these 5 groups, one like going increasingly, one with the lowest saturated fat, one with the highest saturated fat. The one with the highest saturated fat had better health outcomes. What Lifting Vegan Logic did, broke that down, found out like, something must be off here, right? What's going on? Turned out the group with the low saturated fat intake, the group they used, was from low income countries, mostly like people eating poor diets, poor nutritional diets, right? We're talking poor countries, poor people. The group with the most saturated fat were from affluent countries like North America, Europe, and they were eating the highest amounts of fruits, grains, and vegetables and saturated fat, whereas the group with the low saturated fat wasn't eating anywhere near as much fruits and vegetables and grains and all that, right? So, of course, in that scenario, you expect to see a good health outcome from the ones that were eating all the fruits, grains, vegetables, even with the saturated fat. Jordan Peterson, a supposed reality truth seeker, rational thinker, missed that, or on purpose or by accident. Either way, that's messed up, right? That someone with that influence made a video shitting on diets, promoting people eat more saturated fat, which is actually going to cause people to have more health risks. It's incredibly irresponsible, right? Did you follow all of that?
I didn't follow that. No, I have heard of these studies that.
I mean, did you follow me? Did you follow me? I mean, did that make sense? Is what I meant.
I thought you ment did I follow this Jordan Peterson thing? I follow what you're saying. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it's just a shame that he used that How to Lie with Statistics. Basically, there's that book. It's like that's basically what he did. He's like lying with statistics, either on purpose or by accident. It's a lose-lose for him. It's terrible. Like really embarrassing.
Right. Just now that we've kind of like circled a bit back onto the topic of veganism and vegan diets and stuff, which I did kind of want to touch on this again before the end. So
sure.
Another thing that's kind of like very present, because you were mentioning this the saturated fat thing. What do you think about the seed oil debate? This seems to be the
it's
big
the
one
thing right now, isn't it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I again, with stuff like this, it's not like, so I don't like it when the average Joe claims to know, says, oh, I know everything about this. It's like, you don't know shit. So, and I accept that with myself as well. So what I tend to do is I look at people who actually literally devote their entire lives to this stuff. And I know of a couple of people who do this. And so I go and have a look and like, okay, what are they saying? It's like, okay, well, 40% of what you've said, that's gone over my head. Like there's lots of things that I don't know what you're saying, but I get the general gist. So my general gist, what I'm getting from these people, without going into it too deep, is that it's all bullshit. It's fear mongering. It's part of yet another like conspiracy kind of agenda of like, oh, they're trying to get you kind of thing, which some of them turn out to be true, to be fair. And I'm not against conspiracy theories. A lot of them turn out to be true. But the seed oil one does not seem to, with the data that I've seen, and the majority, I say 40%, I didn't understand. There's probably less than that. I was just being silly. But I understand most of it. And from what I understand, it's a lot of hot air. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because, I mean, basically like we've stopped having seed oils, and literally purely because I'm just like, well, I don't need to eat them. I can't really be bothered going through all of the nutritional science. At some point, I might actually spend the time and find out whether that is something that's necessary. But for now, it's like, we swapped out our whatever, I don't know what it was before, like canola or soybean oil or something. And now it's like, now we're having like olive oil and stuff. But I've watched like one debate on this and I didn't find the seed oil argument to be particularly convincing. I guess my attitude is just like, if it's easy not to, and there is some debate over it, fair enough. Like I'll leave it out. But at some point I want to get to the bottom of that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy called Nutrivore on Twitter. He's very passionately pro seed oil, and the dude he's very smart. Like he had some carnivore on his channel recently, and he spanked him that hard and that badly that the carnivore issued a takedown request to YouTube, claiming that he never gave permission, even though he agreed to be in that fucking debate. And YouTube took the video down. They took it down because of this.
Did they?
Because he claimed he didn't know he was being recorded, blah, 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 even though they'd agreed everything prior. What a total loser.
I hope he puts it on Odyssey or something.
It's back up again. It's back up, but he's blurred out the face, so now you can get away with it.
That just makes it more embarrassing for the dude.
It's such a yeah, and I've not watched it. I've just caught little people have like mentioned like highlights of what happened in it, and it sounds really funny. So I'm yet to get to it, but that could be, maybe they get into seed oils there as well. Maybe this guy has seed oil debates, so if you want to check that guy out, Nutrivore, he's a good one to look at.
I will definitely do that. It might be one of his that I've already seen the one debate, but I definitely want to learn more. All right, man. Let me give you. I have one question from my tweet asking for some vegan FUD and hate. You know what FUD is?
Yeah.
I
learned today.
Oh, did you? Oh, you only say okay, yeah. Because someone was like, I don't know what FUD is, and I'm like, yeah, it's like fear. Wait, do I even fucking know? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right?
Yeah,
that's what it means. Anyway, I got one question. It's not really really FUD. This is Ryan Raleigh's asked this question. He says, do you think that some vegan activists and organizations are being funded and driven in a certain direction by people after their own agenda rather than trying to promote veganism?
Yeah. So that question, I would say that there is definitely some agenda from the environmentalist side of things, because I know that there is a lot of money in environmentalism and in the climate crisis. Like it is a big moneymaker for a lot of very, very, very powerful people, like green energy and stuff like that. I'm not, a lot of vegans don't know this, and I've never spoken about it. It's never really been my environmentalism stuff. I just don't deal with it at all. I focus on ethics and animal rights. But I'm aware that, I'm aware that in the climate movement, there's a lot of nefarious actors, because there's a lot of money to be made, like a lot, like we're talking like billions of dollars to be made out of green solutions, which aren't actually fucking green, but that's a whole other thing as well. So I'm aware that there's a lot of money being pumped into it and a lot of people moving chess pieces around. Now, does any of that get into the animal rights space and vegan space? I mean, probably some people are taking money. Some organizations might take money from some big environmental benefactors, like, hey, talk about the environment and we'll give you some money. But I wouldn't say that this is nefarious if an organization does do this, some organization that's like plant-based, it's usually a plant-based diet kind of thing, not necessarily a vegan one, because vegans, we're talking about animals. Veganism is about animals. It's not about the environment. It's not about health. It's about animals. That's what the veganism is all about, right? So, but yeah, there are some people that push a plant-based diet for the planet or whatever. Could they be being paid? Maybe. Are they doing it because they want to, like, I don't know, cause you harm or something? No, they're doing it because they think, well, I care about the planet, and if I can get paid to talk about it, why wouldn't I? That doesn't, why would I turn that down? So it's like a no-brainer. So the answer is possibly yes, possibly it's happening. Like some people are getting paid and moved around like that, but it's not because they're part of some NWO agenda or something like that they think, oh yeah, let's take everything off everyone and make sure, people don't own anything anymore and everything's controlled by the government. And they don't want that. But potentially some people are being exploited for sure. That could be happening. Yeah. But I can't tell you examples or anything, but it could, I can't say it's not happening. I don't know for sure,
Well, that brings me to something else actually, which I almost forgot to ask, which is, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but there seems to be a kind of conflation between veganism and all of the kind of WEF agenda, with the whole like everyone will eat bugs and live in pods and stuff. I mean, personally, I try to respond to this one, but my response tends to be pretty short, which is just like, what the hell do they have to do with each other? Like from my point of view, I don't really see the WEF people promoting veganism much. They're all about the bugs. I haven't seen much vegan, they're not out there supporting vegan charities or anything like that. They're just talking about eating bugs and, eating cricket sandwiches. So I wonder if you could speak to that for a second.
I can totally, the problem is that WF, the agenda, like, what is it? Agenda like 2030 or whatever. A lot of vegans are I don't know what the word would be. Misguided with supporting that, because they think, oh yeah, they're on board with it. They're like, they want to reduce meat. They want to, do all these different things in the planet. And vegans tend to care about the planet, and that's a good thing. We should all care about the planet. That's a great thing that you care about the planet. But with these guys, they see them as like, these are like trying to save the world. They're trying to save the planet. And then when you dig a bit deeper, you're like, I mean, that's what they say they're trying to do, but the way they're trying to do it seems a little bit fishy, a little bit off. They want everyone to eat bugs. Why bugs? Well, we've got enough like plant-based foods. Like, we don't need bugs. And why do they want us to own nothing? And why are they trying to like bring in like vaccine passports and things like that, like to control you? Why do they want your credit cards to be, why do they want you to only have credit cards? Why do they want you to never have, why do they want cashless society? Why do they want all these things? Well, you start to realize like, okay, it's kind of, maybe the environment stuff is being used as an excuse to control you. And so you can call that a conspiracy theory, but I mean, Jesus, go and look at their website, go and look at the things they want. I mean, vegans, we're vegan because we broke out of the nonsense that was getting shoved down our throats by government, basically, by the government and society. This is just another version of that. It's another iteration of that. They're pissing on our backs and telling us it's raining, right? So I feel like vegans, a lot of vegans are misguided when they say like, yeah, we support this. And there are better ways. There are better ways to support the planet, if you want to do environmentalist stuff. That unfortunately, though, we get linked in with these people with this WEF, and it's a shame because it's just, it could not be, like you said, it has nothing to do with veganism. It's all environmentalism. They want to eat bugs. Oh, also one more thing: these people, whenever they meet up, they're not eating vegan. These are all fully fledged, hardcore animal eaters. All of their events they have, it's all steak, it's all meat and dairy and egg and blah blah blah. They could not be further from veganism if they tried. They do not talk about animal rights. They don't talk about everything I spoke about, what animals go through, and the ethical reasons to not do this to them. So no, you're totally right. It's completely separate. Yeah.
All right, cool, man.
Ranted there, man.
No, it's all good. We've gone for a while. This has been awesome. We've definitely kind of like dashed around. So thanks to the listeners for sticking with us. So you're back in Turkey now. Mm-hmm. And what's the vegan scene like over there? Last time I went, it was not very vegan friendly. So
it's not really. I mean, we're in Antalya, and here there was a pretty good vegan restaurant, and then they fired a chef, and then it got bad, and then they closed. So that sucked. There's another vegan restaurant, takes about 45 minutes to make a sandwich. So they're great when you get there, but they're not very. It's 45 minutes later. And apart from that, there's like, there's a couple. There's a good vegan. There's a nice vegan place down by the beach, and that's pretty good. The good food is really good there. There's lots of places with vegan options, some good, some bad. But honestly, like all the stuff, if you want to cook at home, you can get loads of like, fresh fruits and veg here is really cheap and really good to get. There's a couple of specialty items, but like, just if you just want to cook good plant-based meals, like actual healthy meals, you're set here. Food is super cheap if you actually want to eat healthy. Like whole food, plant-based food is really cheap. Same as where you are, right? Mexico, like stuff like beans and veg and stuff is super cheap, right? Very bean heavy, right?
It's pretty good. It'd be nice to be able to get, just a few things like, vegan cheese. It'd be good to like get a bit of vegan cheese. Very, very hard to find unless you go to a specialist store. Yeah. And even things like tofu is like not that accessible. But if you want just like fresh fruit and vegetables and beans and stuff, it's everywhere. It's pretty cheap. So it sounds kind of similar. What brought you to Turkey, by the way?
So yeah, it was kind of within all the COVID madness, and stuff was getting a little bit crazy. It's staying a little bit crazy with the kind of, you got to show your vaccine or test to get in a shop or get in a place. And quite a lot of countries were kind of having this, and we were looking at like, okay, where can we go to that's cheap enough and that doesn't have all this nasty shit going on, because it was just a horrible. We were in Greece for like part of, like we stayed in Greece for a little bit, and it was so bad there. And we were like, right, so Greece is out. We were thinking of moving there. That was another option for us. It was just, they were so bad with it. It was really horrible.
Yeah.
So we were like, right, looking around. We had a friend here and we came to visit him, and we realized that we didn't even think about living here. I don't know. We had bad images of Turkey, I suppose, because of the media kind of paints it in quite a bad light in terms of, you know how it is. I don't know if UK media kind of paints any Muslim country as being like really unsafe and dangerous and bad and blah, blah, blah. So when I came here, it was like, oh my God, it's just a European city. Like, this doesn't feel like it's near the Middle East, like this kind of, the culture is very similar here in this specific city, very similar to any European city. And it's cheap, and they didn't have all this COVID madness going on. They seem to be pretty on top of stuff. And, the weather's good and we can afford it. And it just kind of ticked all the boxes. Like, okay, this seems like a good shout for now. Let's see how things go. And so we're still here. Yeah.
Oh, nice, mate. Yeah, I didn't realize that that it was kind of all of the COVID craziness, which had like partly or entirely kind of inspired that decision. So
I mean, I guess we had to think about it. Yeah, we had to think about it because we were living in Finland at the time. Actually, we'd been to Athens to see, okay, is this a possibility? Nope. Then it was then we came here, then back to Finland with my partner's family, but it's not affordable in Finland. Finland was great, by the way, throughout all the COVID stuff. They also dealt with it really, really well, and didn't ever do any hardcore draconian lockdowns or anything nasty like that. They dealt with it well, and they dealt with it fairly, actually, really fairly. So Finland was great, but it's just, you can't afford it. So we would have stayed there if we could, but then, we found here, so we were lucky.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, I love Turkey, so I definitely hope to come out there again. And if you're still there, then we'll definitely meet up. All right, man. Yeah. This has been great. Yeah, thanks so much for being so generous with your time. Do you want to just kind of let people know where they can find you? All your channels and stuff, and also just any final parting thoughts that you got.
Sure, yeah. You can find me at David Rams on YouTube, and it's David Rams on Twitter and David Rams Instagram. And the podcast, I have a podcast also that Johnny's been on, and that's The Rams Den. So you can go, that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music as well. So yeah, come check it out. I mean, I know you might be new to all this kind of stuff, like this kind of vegan stuff. On my main YouTube, you might find it to be it might piss you off, to be totally honest with you. My videos on my main YouTube channel, David Rams, I challenge you to come over and have a little look around. And hey, if you came from this podcast, leave a comment. I promise I'll be nice. Even if you're not nice, I promise I'll be nice back. So there you go. That's a guarantee. So just come over and give me some shit on the main channel if you want. All I'd say is one thing to close on, that you might think that you're very different from a vegan, but the reality is you hold the exact same values that I do and that Johnny does. The difference is how you interpret them and put them into real life. You think animal abuse is wrong. You think animal cruelty is wrong. You would never abuse an animal. You would never want to hurt an animal for an unnecessary reason. Everybody listening is like, yeah, unless you're a psychopath, right? The difference is that you think eating and using animals is necessary. That's wrong. That's the belief that it will take you. That's the belief that right now will be causing you to fight back against what I'm saying, right? But I'm telling you, it is not necessary. So you are currently living in a way that is against what you believe, because you're causing animal abuse. You're harming animals for unnecessary reasons, for burgers and cheese and stuff that just tastes good. That's not a good enough reason. So I'm sure you agree with me that that's not a good enough reason. to do that to an animal, and that's why we're vegan. So I hope you'll also be vegan, and you can always reach out to me or Johnny to ask questions about it, and maybe even set up a discussion if you want to do like some kind of live discussion, podcast discussion. You could call it a debate if you want to debate, but discussions are always open. They can be, we're open to discussions as well. So I'm trying to say, not only debates. So
yeah, absolutely, man. And, just to kind of follow on from that, like I've been thinking about maybe even possibly doing debate on this channel or something, or, maybe having more of these conversations, but, like it's all about learning, right? Like I think that at the end of the day, people have to be open to hearing like new ideas and stuff. So, like it's, like I said, it's not a vegan podcast and stuff, but I think that my listeners, like they care about like truth and care about like learning about new things. Like otherwise I probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if they were closed-minded and stuff. So hopefully people have taken something from this conversation and at the very least kind of have taken on board some of the things that you've said. So thanks again for coming on, man, and I guess we'll speak again sometime soon.
Cheers for having me.